Hi, this is Gaudy Elkon with Dallas International Film Festival and Selig Film News. We're here with the team behind Transpecos. Guys, introduce yourself.
Hola, I'm Greg, director of the film.
Hi, I'm Clint, and I'm the co-writer and producer of the film.
Hi, I'm Johnny, and I'm an actor in the film. I play a character named Benjamin Davis.
So, guys, where did this come from? Because last time we saw you, Greg, you
Yeah.
were producing some Rwandan cyclists, and now you're stuck in the desert. What?
Greg gets around.
Oh, yeah. What are you doing?
Oh man, Rising from Ashes was a documentary about the first Rwandan national cycling team and their journey to the Olympics, and that was a 7-year endeavor to follow the team to the 2012 London Games, and then more time on the road sharing the movie here at Dallas International Film Festival. But all along, the hope was to direct my first narrative feature, and if there was ever going to be a movie that I would do as my first film, it would be coming back to the border, which was really an essential part of my growth as a man. You know, in college I had an organization that worked down in the borderlands with communities that were essentially torn apart by the conflict. And you go across the Rio Grande River and you're in a completely different world. And it wasn't completely altruistic. We were college students. We drank a lot of beer and ate a lot of tacos. But going back and forth across that bridge and these very brief interactions with Border Patrol shaped my whole view about agents. It was really one-dimensional. And, leaning in your car, asking if you're an American citizen. And then once I started researching, and Clint and I started trying to put together this movie, and you can speak a little more to this, we started to see beyond the symbol and into the human beings who do the job, and that was what was most fascinating to us, and that's the movie we wanted to make, was a story of the human lives sort of caught in the balance on both sides of the line.
Hey, Clint, maybe can you talk about these specific characters, where these kind of guys came from?
Yeah, the interest for us came from into this movie came first from being interested in the world and the people down there, and then what we kind of found as the way in, the most interesting and maybe the way to unlock this crazy surreal world was to look at the people who it's just their 9-to-5 job to work in the world of the border and see all of the surreal things that they see and experience all of the complex emotions that go along with that. And so then when we started, we initially had 4 agents that were in the movie, and we kind of whittled it down as we whittled down the drafts. But it was Greg's idea originally to find 3 characters who have completely different views of their jobs. And so one you'll see in the movie, one is very hard-lined about it and feels that there's a line that you don't cross, and then another character is a little more open-ended about it, where there's some complexity here, and then the third character doesn't seem to really care too much about the job itself, about outside of it being a job. So,
Not to spoil too much, but Johnny, can you tell us which one of those 3 characters?
I don't know if I
encompass?
Which 3 characters?
No, which one of those 3 types are you?
or maybe just talk about Davis a little bit.
Yeah, well, my character, Benjamin Davis, is he's one of the Border Patrol agents who works with Clifton and Gabe, whose characters I can't think of.
Flores and Hobbs. I mean, there were other
Welcome to Texas, everybody.
Johnny's really excited about this movie.
I really am.
We really are.
I actually really am, but
He's done a lot of thinking about it.
we thought a lot about karaoke last night. We got a lot of great people in Texas, and I'm still thinking a lot about them, I think.
Yeah.
No, I play a character named Benjamin Davis, and I guess how do you not give it away? But essentially,
What's his viewpoint on his job?
his
that you're
viewpoint
using?
on his job, I mean, it's my brother's in the military, so I took a lot from him. He's, you take a vow for your life. You essentially put your life on on the line for other people, other citizens, people that you might not even know. And then I think the question that arises is what happens when it's your family's life or it's those people that you don't know's life and the vow that you've taken. That's kind of how I look at him and who he represents in the story.
Yeah, and Davis, to me, to expand a little more on your character and the writing, was someone who probably came into Border Patrol with the idealism of, you know, our generation. We're a very idealistic generation. And there's a picture of what Border Patrol is, and then there's the reality when you start to do the job, and you start to get mired in the bureaucracy, and you start to, you know, in the paperwork and in the, you know, people that you're catching, and, you know, every day the same people coming across, and the drugs and the cartels and just the violence and everything just sort of starts to chip away at that fabric of belief in humanity, and that brings you to a very vulnerable place where you can be exposed to some dangerous situations.
When looking at those dangerous events, and in
Yeah.
particular what happens and
Yeah.
what unfolds, was there an inspiration for that, or was it just something you fabricated? Because it does feel like it could have been like real.
Yes, some of the action. So one of the things about the action in the movie and the dramatic events is we really wanted to be reflective of the desert itself. You know, when violence comes in a desert, you never expect it. You know, just like a storm can kind of appear out of nowhere, and then you know, a rattlesnake can just tap you right out of a bush. But you know, that's the way violence comes in Border Patrol too. You know, it's the car you least expect, it's the person you least expect, and
Sometimes the person next to you.
and sometimes the person next to you. But you know, it's always, you know, out of nowhere. And so, like, that gave us a lot of fun room to play with and sort of putting together the sequences, is that we could literally just be moving like this and all of a sudden take a hard left or hard right, and that's really how it happened in the Border Patrol. And actually, the scene where Hobbs gets stroked by the car, that actually happened to a Border Patrol agent. So that was a real story. Guy got driven down a highway, you know, pulled a sidearm, shot the driver. So that really did happen.
Was it, research-wise, was it tough to tackle some of these? Because, I mean, these are people's lives, and it's different than the military. It feels like some of these guys are just thrown in there, and it's so different than that type of atmosphere, if you will.
And it's been very interesting. One thing we talk about a lot that we found through the research is after 9/11, there was a huge hiring surge that happened in the Border Patrol and Department of Homeland Security, and a lot of the recruitment posters that they were putting out for the Border Patrol to recruit members and agents was, "Do you like the outdoors? Join the Border Patrol." And so you've got this just massive amount of new people coming in. Some of them were ex-military and very qualified for doing what they're doing the job out there, and some of them just were Walmart clerks or worked at used tire shops, you know. And now they're thrown into this situation where you're right, it's not the military, where you're away in some foreign field dealing with something, and then you come home and you can kind of come out of it and go back into real life. The men and women who are working day in and day out in the Border Patrol, we found through talking to agents and through our research, they're experiencing these insane experiences day in and day out, and then they go home at night to a trailer home or to the suburbs or whatever, and then they're going back and the next day they're seeing a dead body in the field, or they're arresting someone coming across who's barely alive from dehydration, or just experiencing all of these insane human moments, and then having to go home and figure out what to eat for dinner and watch, you know, King of Queens on television or whatever.
But I like how you guys capture that psyche of
Yep.
it's right there. They can't escape it, and it kind of seems almost futile what's going on.
Yeah, you know, it's one of these conflicts that has existed, you know, since men have walked on that same border region. You know, a border is a human construct, and it's a line drawn on a map, and you know, the Apaches and Comanches fought over that same land, and you know, the Texas Rangers and the Republic of Texas and Mexico. And you know, really, when Border Patrol first started, it was the Chinese Immigration Authority. That's all we really cared about coming across from Mexico was the Chinese. You know, so it's in this conflict that has taken different faces sort of persisted on the same line, and we're just sort of inheriting it and passing it on. And that's really, it can seem futile and it can seem maddening, but if there's any hope, it's at a human-to-human level. And that's really what we tried to bring the whole movie down.
Yeah.
We didn't want to operate at the big power players in the political systems. We wanted to operate at the ground level of the people on both sides. And, as you see in the movie, there's the tables turn enough times that, the unlikeliest people are saving your life. And that's really our idea, at least, of a way out of this conflict.
What did we say that last sentence again?
The unlikeliest people, are there to save your life, and at the human-to-human level, that's our way out of the conflict.
Yeah, this is probably going too political on it, but I think about North Korea a lot, and I think about, there's something called mass psychology, which is whenever they see Kim Jong, whoever in any time period, in any footage, they will run out to him as if he is a god. And that propaganda is displayed over and over and over again to where it becomes something called mass psychology, where they all believe this man is a god. And that shows you what the human nature is capable of, is believing what is fed to them. But when you really get down to it and look at each other in the eyes, and there's a scene in this movie where, despite somebody trying to stop them, they decide to help them. And that, I think, ultimately every human being has the capability and innate desire to do. That we're led to believe all these things about this border and these lines that we've created over time and people fighting, and there's perfectly rational primal instincts as to why that would be. But when you really get down to it, there's not much there's no difference. The first night I was in New Mexico, I was in a 1964 Airstream in the middle of nowhere, and I got out of it and I looked up at the stars, and you could literally throw a stone to the border. And the border, for anybody who doesn't know, because I didn't know, is just a bunch of cattle prods essentially going like this over and over, all up and down the border. And I looked up at those stars, and it was so dark that you couldn't see that fence anymore. And I realized that no matter which side you're sitting on, you're looking at the same stars. And then that is some sort of, you unite because of that. And it taught me a lot about humanity and just thinking outside of what you've been sold or told. And that doesn't necessarily mean that borders are bad things, or that we have to, there is some form of government and law that each region has, but it's made me look at people differently, I suppose.
What was it like writing characters that would have these twists that would be unexpected? And maybe, Johnny, you can talk about working with Gabriel and Clifton on... I didn't expect anything that happened, and that surprised me.
Awesome.
I thought I went into it, was I know exactly what Clifton's characters would be like, and I know what Johnny's character, and it wasn't that way.
Yeah.
Why did you write it that way?
That's human beings, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I particularly like the thriller genre because what you can do in a thriller is you can constantly be pulling the rug from the audience, and the audience can constantly shift their point of view about the characters they're following through that. And I think that's an appropriate device to look at the border through, because, really one of the things we try and shape, and actually in many drafts of the script, we were talking about this at the Q&A yesterday, was that in different drafts of the script, different people were the bad guy, different of the three agents. And, the cartel is a highly sophisticated, powerful organization that plays by no rules. And Border Patrol is an underserved, vast agency full of rules. And when you pair those two things against each other, and you have an enemy like the cartel who looks at the agents that they're trying to expose and can find any one point of weakness, and they know how to expose it to maximum effect, that we like the idea that we never really portrayed any of the agents as a villain. We just portrayed them as people caught in an impossible situation where there was no right choice.
And we tried to do that from the beginning from the beginning of the movie, set each of these three agents up so that you feel like, as an audience member, oh, I get that. That's the guy who believes this. Oh, that one's the one who doesn't care about that. And then just shift that on each one and put the characters in situations where they make decisions that shifts your perception of them one way or the other.
For me, when I think about Davis, or I think about the first time this ever happened to me was on Perks Being Wallflower, and they started saying, whenever we started doing interviews, or people would talk about the book, and they'd say, "Wow, your character is such a jerk," and "Wow, he's like a villain." And I never thought of him that way. He's just a product of his environment and everything that was thrown at him at a young age. And I think about the same thing with Davis. Is in our movie, there's a villain, I suppose he's an antagonist in some way, but I don't really see him as a villain, which is maybe why it feeds into you weren't expecting what was going to happen, because I don't know what Hobbs's and Flores' story is outside of our story. But for Davis, we're exploring the side that he couldn't face, which is if I was up against any of that, I had no idea how I would cope. If you're faced with the choice between your family and your duty, I think there's a villain in everybody. That's why we can identify with people like Daniel Plainview and There Will Be Blood, and Heath Ledger as the Joker, because we're so far removed from that, and that would never possibly be us. But there's something innate that recognizes, hey, you've got that in you too. And I had to look for that and say, where's the humanity here, as opposed to this is the bad guy, this is the good guy. As an actor, I don't really think about it in those terms. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Am I speaking
definitely.
clearly? I don't even know if I'm saying anything. No, I think I went on a tangent earlier. But the coffee is kicking in. And the answers are only going to get better. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I enjoyed being here.
Thanks for coming, Ryan.
Thanks for having
Thanks for
me.
being here.
Thank you guys for coming. Thank you for...
Well, I guess the final question.
No, it's not. I was kidding. Please keep going, because the answers will get better.
Well,
I will say something somewhat articulate. I'm not going to use, just articulate. It will be somewhat articulate by the end.
Well, what's it like having the film here at Dallas International Film Festival and, keeping it here in Texas and very much showcasing it here?
Yeah, when we got the invitation, it was something that I don't think any of us would have ever turned down, because, I was born and raised in Fort Worth, Texas, and the theater we played in last night at the Angelica was a theater I came to when I was in high school and college, and sort of uncovering this storytelling side of me. That's where I went to get inspired. And then our own movie was playing in that same room, and also so much of our family and our friends are here, and above all else, like, there's an exciting thing happening culturally and artistically in Dallas, and we wanted to be a part of that. But Clint lives here in Dallas now, and Johnny was raised here, and so
for me it's amazing. I can't.
Yeah,
believe
you had your own story at the Deep Elm.
Oh, yeah.
Right, I started whenever this was Deep Elm Film Festival, and I was 14 when I first volunteered at the Deep Elm Film Festival, and I remember seeing James. I saw him yesterday, and I haven't seen him in, what would that be, 15 years or something like that. And I remembered it because it was such a distinct moment. Alexander Payne was there with Sideways, and Sideways was just about, it was kind of doing this. Went on to win the Oscar, and Alexander Payne became Alexander Payne. Paul Giamatti, like all these great actors. And then to have a movie here and, being a guest of the festival is amazing. I can't believe it. And then we had a great time last night at the Q&A, and there were these kids sitting in front who were like 14 or 15 who had skipped their last period to come and watch our movie.
Yeah.
And we got to ask them, is there any filmmakers in the audience? And just share support, because it can be so hard to make a movie. It's nearly impossible. And being in Dallas, outside of LA and New York, where the main hubs are, but it's so cool because we're all Texans, and we created a movie that's relevant to that, and then people have received it well, and it feels really neat. I feel really lucky.
Well, guys, you definitely made an amazing movie. It was powerful to watch, and I definitely hope people get to see more of it. Thank you guys so much. for coming
Yeah,
out.
Thanks,
thank you.
man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, guys.
Definitely. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.